Good evening, and thank you for participating in tonight's public forum. I am Shauna Neely, the town's communications manager and community engagement coordinator. With me tonight are Police Chief Mike Anderson, Deputy Police Chief Lou Malzone, Director of Public Works Rob Faley, Joan Craig, who is the chair of our Traffic Safety Committee, and our town manager Jill Goldsmith. We have a very short presentation for you tonight, and we'll take questions and comments at the end. So tonight we'll be reviewing information relevant to the proposal to adopt Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 90, Section 17C, which would allow the town to reduce the speed limit from the statutory 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour on roadways in thickly settled or business districts that are not state highways. This proposal was originally brought to our Traffic Safety Committee by residents who were concerned about speed of traffic on their streets. The committee felt that consideration of adopting this section of general law and the possible implications of such were outside the committee's charge and reported this to the Select Board with no recommendation on January 14th. After discussion, the board voted unanimously to have an article prepared for the 2025 annual town meeting, putting the decision on whether or not to adopt Chapter 90 17C in the hands of our voters. So tonight's forum was scheduled to provide an opportunity for the police department to share relevant data it has collected, the Director of Public Works to relay information on the impact of implementing the changes to signage if the article passes, and for you and the members of the public to ask questions and express any opinions on the proposal. So to visualize the impact, we had our GIS specialist create this map based on the definition in Chapter 90 of what a thickly settled or business district is. As you can see, it is the bold black lines represent the streets that will be affected. These are areas where it's either a built-up roadway for businesses or has residences that are on average 200 feet or less apart for a distance of 1/4 mile or more. Route 28 and 137 are not affected as they are state highways. I'm going to turn it over now to Deputy Chief Malzone to relay some information they have gathered on data. Next one.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lou Malzone, Deputy Chief of Police. We have some data we're going to share with you. This is data from 2024. We had 669 motor vehicle stops. 520 of those were verbal warnings. 149 of those citations were issued. Those citations include criminal applications, civil citations, arrests, and written warnings. As you can see, the department uses a great deal of discretion when deciding on who to actually write citations to. And there were a total of 1,866 stationary traffic enforcement cases. That's when you see a cruiser roadside using their radar units to get speed data. The cruisers are also equipped with radar units for moving radar. So other than the 1,800 that you saw there, majority of the time when you see a cruiser on the roadways, they are collecting radar data. 2020 to 2024 motor vehicle crashes. There were 1,050 reported. Those include minor property damage, major property damage, hit and runs, in crashes with injury. 850 were investigated. The discrepancy in those two numbers from the 1,050 to the 850 is a lot of time. There are times where people come in and report accidents that have happened in the past. Of the 850 that we investigated, 590 were minor property damage. 235 were major. The difference between the minor and the major is if it's $1,000 of damage or more, it's considered a major. 186 of those were hit and runs. 39 had injuries. Out of those, there were 11 arrests, 20 citations issued, 13 involved pedestrians, and 6 involved cyclists. 2020 to 2024 speeding data, 143 speeding citations issued. As you can see the breakdown here, these are some roadways that have heavy radar enforcement. There is several other roads in town that we run radar on, but this is the high percentage. So the beginning of last summer, the department received 2 new pieces of radar equipment. One is a digital display. Some of you may have seen. We can attach it to trees. We can attach it to telephone poles. That has a digital readout of what the vehicle speed is, and those actually record the data as well. And then we have another piece of equipment, which is a covert box. So we mount it the same way on telephone poles, but there's no digital readout on it. So one of the areas that we surveyed was Cedar Street from August 25th to September 4th of 2024. The speed limit there is 30 miles an hour, thickly settled. Over those, from the 25th to the 4th, 7,518 vehicles were surveyed. The average speed of those vehicles was 24.89 miles an hour. 7,496 vehicles were traveling the speed limit or less. The vehicles over the speed limit were 22. The max speed was 51 miles an hour. Minimum speeds 10 miles an hour. And average of 751.8 vehicles per day were surveyed. The 85th percentile speed was 30.21. The significance of the 85th percentile is if the state was to come out and do a speed study to determine speed limit on a roadway, they use the 85th percentile speed, which was 30.21 on Cedar Street. The next area we wanted to share, another highly traveled area, was Stepping Stones Road. September 12th to September 18th, 2024. Again, posted speed limits 30, thickly settled. Over those 6 days, 8,785 vehicles were surveyed. Average speed was 27.69. Vehicles over the speed limit are 112. The max speed was 58 miles an hour, minimum again at 10, and the average vehicles per day, 1,464.2, and again, the 85th percentile speed was 33.68.
So my name is Rob Faley. I'm the Director of Public Works. You can see from the map that the vast majority of Chatham's roads would be eligible for this lower speed limit. So if we were to replace all the signs on those roads and change all those signs, there's of course a cost involved. And what would that be? So we have just over 200 town roads. Again, most of them are eligible for that change. If there are some signs out there now, if we only had to replace the 25-mile-per-hour sign, that's a pretty low cost investment, $25 a piece if we ordered them in bulk. But for all new locations, we would need to install the 25-mile-per-hour sign, the thickly settled sign, and a new signpost. Typically, there would be at least 2 of these per road. So that would be about $203.50 per road. Again, order of magnitude, we kind of erred on the safe side to make sure we were capturing. I'm sure additional requests would come in for roads that are not covered now. So the impact would be about $80,000 in total. But the big impact to the DPW would be the labor involved. To traditionally be about an hour and a half per sign, and that would equate to 600 hours or 75 days of labor to install these signs.
Joan Craig, Chair of the Traffic Safety Committee. I just want to give you a little history of why we're here also, because over many years, our committee has received a number of requests and petitions from neighborhoods such as our beach roads, Ridgeville, Cockle Cove, Forest Beach, Pleasant Street, et cetera, Stage Harbor, and Cross Street recently regarding their concerns about speed. Often the speeders are neighbors or renters, landscapers, and delivery trucks. We're also very, very aware that one car going 10 miles over the speed limit is one car too many. With no sidewalks in many of these areas, there have been concerns expressed by our committee and others that pedestrians also have to take responsibility and safeguards when walking. When necessary, as mentioned earlier about the data, we asked the police department to do a study regarding the speed in a certain area when it's on our agenda. Prior to our meeting, our committee goes separately to those areas to observe what the problem is or might be. And the police department has been very helpful with this new data that they're able to give us regarding speed, time of day, number of cars, et cetera. We look at the data that the police department gives us and make our recommendations to the select board, and we remind those who come before us at our agenda that it is only a recommendation that we make, that the final discussion and vote is by the select board. We've recommended thickly settled 30-mile-per-hour signage in a number of locations over the past few years. We've also recommended some flashing solar signs in a few areas of town. We remind individuals again that our charge is to recommend and that the select board does have the final say. We recently recommended 30 miles per hour thickly settled signage for Cross Street, which the select board approved. At that meeting, they also, as mentioned earlier, asked the Traffic Safety Committee to look into the information with regards to Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 17C, which is about reducing it to 25 miles per hour. And with the information that we received from our liaisons, both Deputy Chief Malzone and DPW Director Faley, the Traffic Safety Committee discussed but took no action on the items, and the findings were presented to the Select Board at their public hearing on January 14th.
So we invite any questions or comments, if you wanted just to come up to the podium. If you wouldn't mind just giving your name. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Dave Van Wy. I live on 11 Spinnaker Lane, which is just off of Old Queen Anne. And generally, I'm very much in favor of taming the speed in town, especially around the area I live in and places I travel. I travel on Old Queen Anne very frequently and Stepping Stones very frequently. But I'm concerned that the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit will also have some downsides to it, too. And you may be quite familiar with these since you've done some of these studies. But my concern is I like to drive along Old Queen Anne at 30 miles an hour. You know, sure, it goes over and under a little bit. And it seems like a natural speed for the road, which has some hills. It's an old cart road turned into a roadway. And it seems like an appropriate speed. 25 might be an appropriate speed as well. But my concern is when I'm driving 30 miles an hour, which I try to make a point of doing, sometimes I look back and there's a line of cars behind me, and 3, 4, 5 cars, and I'm the bad guy holding everybody up. So that's not a comfortable feeling. Other times, people are tailgating me. Sometimes they rush up and then they finally back off a little bit when they realize I'm not going to be pushed further, which you know how that is. Sometimes people come up and sit on your tail and they want to push you. They want you to go 30, 35, 40 miles an hour. Actually, in the summertime, in going home on Old Queen Anne Road from the Stop and Shop, for example, I've had people not only tailgate me, then flip me off when I'm trying to make my turn back home. So that's not a very comfortable feeling. And I've actually had people yell and scream at me and say that I shouldn't be driving on the road when I'm only going the speed limit. These appeared to me to be visitors in the summer who had no regard for our speed limits or any of the safety issues around our town. So it's very difficult in those situations. This kind of makes me think that we might need to do a little bit more than just change the speed limit signs. I mean, that would be fine, but if we don't also, for example, increase enforcement, or perhaps change some of the painting on the road to alert people to the fact that they need to slow down. Or, I like those flashing lights. You have a really nice flashing light over there at Stepping Stones and Old Queen Anne. And matter of fact, I walk and bike up that way, and that's even perilous, trying to get across there, because not everybody even slows down with the flashing light. So, I guess what I'm thinking is that 25 is fine, but we need to perhaps be more selective about which roads we're doing it on. Some roads should be 20 probably, and maybe 30 on other roads. But we need to accompany that with some additional enhancements. I know that our police department can't be everywhere, and that's understandable. I certainly like it when I'm going down Old Queen Anne and I'm holding up traffic going 30 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden a cruiser's sitting on the road and everybody goes, whoa, there's a cruiser there, I better slow down, maybe this guy isn't so bad after all. So anyway, these are some of the real concerns that happen. It can be stressful, and I'm afraid that there's a potential for road rage. In fact, I've experienced road rage there. So we need to calm things down. We need to do some behavioral adjustment on particularly our visiting drivers in the summertime who don't understand our situation here. And we need to look at the thing perhaps in a little broader view. But generally, I'm in favor of it, but please do something else that will cut down the stress, the road rage, and some of these other issues. And I would certainly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I'm Diane Conley. I live at 245 Old Queen Anne Road. I live on the Old Queen Anne Speedway. It is from Wilford Road, where they slow down at the bicycle thing, and then to Skyline Drive. And they put the pedal to the metal, and I hear them at night, I hear them in the daytime, and I experience everything the previous speaker has, including when I'm turning into my driveway, I am honked at, I am also given the finger, and they are riding up beside me onto the sidewalk to get behind me as I'm turning in the driveway. On the sidewalk, there are people walking, there are people with dogs, and a cyclist. I have gone down to the police department, thank you, and they have done more of the patrolling. I see them frequently, and which has been a help. The 25-mile speed limit, I don't know if that's going to work, but if there are signs put up like on Old Commerce Road that says your speed is, going either way on that, it reminds people how fast they're going. And I did have one sign this summer on the pole, and I work in my front yard right on the road frequently. And I looked up one day, and a car went by at 42, and the one behind it was 56 miles an hour. So people don't pay much attention. But if you're told what your speed limit is, it kind of reminds you what's going on. But anyway, thank you. I sent a message to the select board, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shauna, can I provide an update? I appreciate those comments, and we are on the verge of installing radar feedback signs on that stretch of Old Queen Anne Road. I'd say, maybe within the next month or so, those should be going up.
Hi, Dean Nicastro from the Select Board. I'm just here as an individual, and I'm not here to make any argument or offer an opinion. I just want to understand something about the statute. This is a local option statute, and if we adopt it, does that mean every street in town would become a 25-mile-an-hour? Or do we identify particular streets, Chief?
No. The answer to your question is no, they don't all have to be 25. The state recommends doing town-wide, but the town can opt to select the roads that are more suited to be 25.
And recently, you were before the select board when we were discussing the referral from the Traffic Safety Committee about adopting a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit on various roads in town. Do we need to accept this statute in order to do that?
It's my understanding that yes. Yeah.
Okay. I just really wanted to get that clarified. Thank you.
This is on. Hello, my name is Roy Johansson. I'm part of the River Bay Neighborhood Association. I'm one of the members. Anyway, we came before last year to the Traffic Safety Commission to see if we could lower the speed limit within River Bay. Our request was actually for 20 miles an hour, but today there is no indication of how fast or slow someone can go. And I live in a particular area where I see speeding all the time going past my house. Right now, in the 4 entrances to River Bay, it says residential area, might say go slow. Should be slowly, but it does say something like that. How could we then petition to have a densely populated, what's it called, thickly settled, and then have the sign at each of those 4 locations, just so we can set the expectation of what we would like within River Bay?
So we would have to verify that the driveways are within 200 feet, and I believe on the map, it showed that they were.
Yeah, I believe.
So that would be a request you'd have to bring in front of the Traffic and Safety Committee.
Okay, to take part of this.
Currently we do thickly settled 30 miles per hour.
Right, I don't want that. But if it goes to the 25, that would be helpful. All right, yes.
Could I also mention those signs that you mentioned are your own River Bay Association signs?
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I know,
But you mentioned those earlier. When you first spoke, you mentioned about the signs going in.
no, they say, but there's some signs that says neighborhood, something. It's not one of those signs of ours that we had proposed.
Thank you.
So right now, that's what it says. It says something about not densely populated, but just something residential area. I think that's what it says at each of the entrances. And it doesn't set any expectation as a result of that. So the request is, if indeed we go with this 25 mile per hour, to have that thickly settled at each of the 4 entrances. All right?
I just had a question. So is there a posting for the speed limit anywhere in River Bay?
Nope.
You're saying no, there
No,
isn't?
there is
Okay.
none. And it's interesting to see how, it's interesting, it just makes me boil over when I see people speeding in the neighborhood. And also FedEx, UPS, even the post office going quite fast within our streets. Okay, thank you.
If you'd like to just start lining up, that's fine.
Good evening. My name is Jim Murphy. I live on Orleans Road near the traffic light at Old Harbor. So I got 4 kids and 9 grandchildren. No sidewalks there at all, none. And ever since the Rotary went in on Main Street, everybody wants to try and avoid that in the summer. So they take the alternate route of Orleans Road. And I can't say for sure, but the traffic seems to more than doubled in front of my house going into town. So there's a lot of trucks too, commercial trucks, that they must feed the town all the supplies they need. They all go by the house. And if you're at the traffic light at Old Harbor, there's a sign that's speed sign that's posted 45 miles an hour, and that's going north. There's a sign not more than 20 feet from that on the opposite side that says speed limit 15. That makes no sense to me at all. So, and I understand it's a, a state highway, but somebody's gonna get hurt there. It's just, the problem exists that I've got kids that are going to the beach, crossing the street, and I'm always very concerned about them. So if there's something can be done there, there's two signs, 115, 145, 20 feet apart. Thank you.
Jim, these issues have come before our committee on numerous occasions, and because it is a state highway, our hands are tied as a traffic safety committee, and we have always suggested that the individuals in the area of concern write letters to the DOT.
Yeah, but why are the signs, one is 15 miles an hour, and across the street, 20 feet away from this sign, 15, it's 45 miles an hour.
And I think that would be something that should be underlined in your information to Mass DOT.
Well, I'm asking the police officers that are here tonight, why is that?
If I'm familiar with the area, and correct me if I'm wrong, the 15 is an inbound speed limit and a 40 is an outbound speed limit. Yeah, right.
So close together.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think, again, if I'm thinking of the exact spot where you're talking about, that 15 is to slow you down prior to the intersection with the traffic light, and the 45 across the street is the advisory to let you know what your limit is as you're traveling westbound or northbound.
45 miles an hour, thickly settled area is appropriate?
Me personally, I would probably think that the state speed limit could be adjusted, but that's outside of my authorization. But I do sympathize with you.
Yeah, so how does
If you want to continue, would you come back to the mic? Okay.
Yes, my name's Creighton Nickerson, and I'm going to address his problem, and I'm going to address the other person's problem on Spinnaker Lane. The one on Spinnaker Lane, and I can, think the speed limit should be 30, just because the fact is, nobody's really going fast till they get almost to past Wilford Road and that little stretch going up the hill. When you're going up that hill, if you got a truck, he's going to be downshifting, then next thing you know, people will be arguing about noise. You take a diesel, and particularly with these new automatics nowadays, they're not as quiet as everybody seems to think. I've gone, and I work personally for the DPW, and I've gone down Cedar Street, driving down Cedar Street to pick up a street, and I'm doing 20 miles an hour, and I've been accused of going 45 miles an hour because the noise of the truck. The engine's tacking up, but the transmission's not catching up to the speed that you're doing. Now, his saying, and I agree with him, they have changed that 40-mile-per-hour sign to a 45, and of course, across the street, there is a sign, as you say, coming inbound 15. But they also got passing lanes all the way from Shore Road up past Stony Hill, almost to Old Mail Road. And to me, that does not make sense, because they call it, there's not thickly settled. And that's a state highway. And unfortunately, the state highway goes under different rules than what the town does. Now, I feel, and I've gone down Cross Street, because I've been going down a couple of these roads just to see where 30-mile-per-hour signs were. And I saw one on Cross Street, and I said, well, I can't really visualize anybody going faster than 30 miles an hour from Town Hall to Stage Harbor Road or vice versa. At Cedar Street, it gets a little problematic because sometimes it's narrow road, the sidewalks are right there. If you get two trucks meeting, you could possibly clip mirrors, and they're not cheap anymore. You turn around, these new mirrors on these trucks are now $500 plus, to replace. I think Rob could attest to that if he had to replace a mirror on a truck. But my feeling is that I feel there needs to be more study done on, is it really necessary to go to 25 versus 30? If you're in that demographic there where you had your average speed, I think you said 31 something for, was it Cross Street or whatever that one was, that's within the margin of error, if you want to put it. If you turned around and had that, and it said everybody was doing 35 plus, then I could see it. I remember a long time ago when Gibby Barthick was the superintendent, and on Shore Road, the people on Shore Road wanted the speed limit all the way to 25, and they wanted to have the state come down and look at the road. And Gibby says, I wouldn't do that if I was you, because the state may turn around, up the speed limit to 30 or 35 versus 30 or under. So you have to be careful how you want to adjust this. I mean, I've been out of the DBW for a while now, so I have not posted any new signs and what the criteria is. Now, I'm doing this by old memory, old school. And that's all I got to say, but I would really not push the issue to go to 25 if it's within the 25 to 30. And now I know on Old Comers, down around the corner there by the Heron Run, they do definitely booger down there. Maybe the thing would be put up some more of these signs that's like you have on Old Comers that will read the speed, change to red if you go above it on certain roads, and see how that plays out. If there's a way that you could track it from the information on that, then you might have more of a baseline thing versus the trailer. Yeah, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. John Holgren's online. Do you want to go ahead, John?
Hi there, from Clearwater, Florida, where, down here, speeders sometimes go 140. Anyway, do I understand this correctly, that this would simply allow you to put up the white, basically, signs, which would be then the legal limit, you could write a ticket for, versus the yellow cautionary signs, which in some cases now are 25. Is that correct?
John, can you re-ask that question?
Sure. I was in conversation with one of you guys before. I understood there's places where you have the yellow speed limit sign and then the white ones. And the white ones are the ones you can write the ticket for, and the yellow ones you can't. So you might have a yellow sign that might be 25. Is that correct?
The yellow and black are advisory. You're correct. Those
Right.
are non-enforceable. The white and black are absolute speed. Those are the white and black ones are the ones where there's been engineered speed studies done, typically by the state. The thickly settled statutory speed signs, which are typically yellow and black also, yes, those are enforceable.
Okay. So, but if this was passed, it wouldn't necessarily mean that everything would have to be 25. It could be sort of selective, correct?
There is that option. There is that option.
Okay. In that case, I think it seemed like because that just gives you another tool to work with if you for those situations where it might be necessary to try to make it a little tighter. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be applicable to everybody. Thank you much and I'll be seeing you guys in a couple months, I think.
Thank you.
Jeff Fugelstad, Stage Harbor Road. I'm coming with a request of at least 25 or more signatures of independent houses on Stage Harbor Road requesting that the speed limit be reduced to 25 miles an hour. In front of our house, which is about 3/4 of the way down from the circle, the trucks, especially at 4:30 and early in the morning, are going significantly over 30 miles an hour. And I haven't seen anybody get a ticket. Now, I am aware that when I stopped at the Stage Harbor Marina, the officers sitting in a car there, I mentioned that, and the officer said, yes, it's a speedway. And that was referring to Stage Harbor Road. In my experience, there are only really two straightaways in Chatham on this side of town, and that's Stage Harbor Road and Cedar Street. And one thing I want to bring to your attention, I was driving down Cedar Street the other day, and it was at about, late in the afternoon, and the sun was so bright as I was coming up a hill that I could not see. And there was somebody standing next to a group of post boxes, and they looked at me as if I was in their way for getting some mail. So I would request that the Stage Harbor Road speed limit be reduced to 25. And did I mention that most of the speeders are early in the morning, late in the afternoon, with workmen going home from whatever their job was. I did have an anecdotal situation where I was next to the street and somebody was coming by at about 50 miles an hour, and I went like that. And the person in the truck gave me a retaliatory signal that the heck with you, I'm going to do what I want to do. So I'm not sure how to proceed with this, but I started this effort about 2 years ago before COVID was here, and now I do have at least 25 signatures again out of about 35 houses between the circle and Bridge Street. So I would appreciate something be done. Yes, sir.
Sir, can I add, you are correct. You made a statement where you said you observed on Cedar Street that the traffic seemed to be higher in the morning with the workers and the deliveries coming in,
Yes.
and then in the afternoon hours. The data that we display on this slide, when we roll out one of our data collection devices, we have a lot more fields than we could put on this slide, and you are correct in some instances. You know, it doesn't just show the amount of vehicles, the speed of the vehicles, but it also has the ability to capture what times are the highest speeds indicated, and all that does is assist us with better managing our time and our enforcement. If there's nobody speeding relatively at the noontime hour, as opposed to the 7 or the 4 or the 5 in the afternoon, we also can use that data to direct our enforcement. So you are correct with that observation.
The other thing I would like to mention is that since we've moved in full-time a couple of years ago, there are now at least 6 families that have children under the age of 6, and several are toddlers at 2 and 3 years old. A couple of years ago, on another incident, a dog was hit in front of our house. Fortunately, the person that hit the dog was going slowly enough so the dog didn't suffer any lasting trauma. But it is a place to think about with regard to the speed limit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Corey Metters, the Select Board. I know we have this on our agenda next Tuesday, but I'm going to take a second bite at the apple because I have a data question. Just give me a week to kind of process a couple things. So, Town of Chatham, there is a large volume of roads that would qualify for this scenario. I mean, some communities probably have less thickly settled streetways. We are in a situation where we would have quite a few roads that would qualify if we reduced this to 25 miles an hour. So, with that being said, is there any data in both directions? One, if that were to be put in place, that it does create the the calming effect, the safety impact that the citizens are looking for? Or on the flip side, does it create situations where people are tailgating, passing, or doing things in a negative fashion that would almost increase some of the safety concerns? I don't know if there is data. If there is, I'd love to know about it. And we also, the other kind of element of the question I want to throw out there is, I mean, when I hear your conversations about speeding, and I think part of it is that we think about in the volume of the summer and the shoulder season where more bodies are here, more, visitors, citizens, whatever. And then in the off season, January, February, March, when it's a little bit quieter, is there any data that would suggest that, that 25 an hour is inadvertently abused because people are used to driving 30 miles an hour and they're going 30, 35, and there's really no one around, but they're going over the 25-mile threshold. So does that have any impact on any of the behavior data that you can suggest? So I'm not weighing in, one way or another, but there's still a lot of questions. I think for me, the one thing that's certain is there's certain roadways in this community that have been identified and mentioned from previous speakers that at the very least we should start identifying and working on. I think we can start from there. It's an easy process, and maybe start with that element at the very least, and then build from there. So I'm thankful that some people showed up tonight. I think there's some people online, and if you didn't get a chance to ask questions tonight, I guess come to our meeting on next Tuesday at 5:30. So thank you.
Corey, I'll just add to that. We still deploy these speed monitoring devices in the off-season. One way to potentially interpret the data is if you have an average of 751 vehicles on Cedar Street at the end of August, it would be safe to say that that number is significantly lower in February. Does that larger amount of traffic in the summer period act as a traffic control device itself by sheer volume slowing the traffic down, as opposed to, we have a chapter and section that we can enforce for speeders. It's called greater than reasonable and proper. It's kind of a catch-all. So where we would use that would be, is 30 miles an hour on, is 30 miles an hour on Cedar Street in February at 9 o'clock at night greater than reasonable and proper? Probably not. But is 30 miles an hour on Ridgevale Road in July greater than reasonable and proper? We all can agree most definitely. But we do have the ability to capture the data. I think that what you're asking for, and we'd be happy to present that further. I just don't have that tonight, but that's something that we can capture. And I will add, when it comes to the enforcement, the perception of over-enforcement or the perception of the lack thereof, I can only speak to what the police department has done and is doing. We're trying to increase and maintain our staffing so that we do have extra officers that have extra time to devote to traffic enforcement. We're continuing to leverage the technology that we have to expand our portable speed detection devices, whether they're the ones that indicate the speed. Sometimes those are great. Sometimes the public want to see that. Sometimes the covert boxes are better because some people, when they see the speed limit, they decrease their speed. And I think the police department and the DPW are coming at this from a united front, because I know Rob has his own budget for certain signage and certain types of signage, and his budget is probably just as tight as mine. The police department is looking at grants or other opportunities to secure some more of these devices. So if Rob isn't able to purchase them through his department, we can certainly try to procure them through the police department. When we just had the radar trailer, the sole radar trailer, and we advertised that it was available for anybody to be put in their neighborhood. It was always in high demand. I think when the word gets out that we have some of these types of new equipment or more of them, we'll be happy to deploy those. But again, Corey, to your question at the podium, we'll come back and dig a little bit deeper to see if we can answer that specific question, so thank you.
Ma'am, and then we have a gentleman whose hand is up online, so go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Barbara Cahoon. I live in another street away, the other end of town, Forest Beach Road, South Chatham. 2 years ago, a group of us put together a petition to present to the traffic committee and the police, and we got 500 signatures in the middle of winter of other people who were concerned about the speeding on the 4 beach access roads of Pleasant Street, Forest Beach Road, Mill Creek, and Bayview. Of those 4, only one has a sign on it that tells you how fast to go, and it's one of the yellow diamond ones, so you have a lot of wiggle room on what you can drive on there. There are none on Pleasant Street, Mill Creek, or Bayview. And I know in talking with the police that they, over the time, they have captured 60-mile-per-hour people going down Pleasant Street. And one of my neighbors who lives about, she lives behind me on Pleasant Street, and when her child was 6 years old, she was afraid to have him cross the street to get on the bus, so she would walk him over there. That was 30 years ago. There's still no sign up there. So people still don't know what to do or where to drive. But we're thrilled that we have more police patrol, but you can put up all the signs you want, but unless you have some way to enforce it, it doesn't mean squat. I mean, and the other thing I wanted to mention is, and to that point, when I was a kid, I grew up in town in the 60s and the 70s, and downtown Main Street, nobody was stopping for the crosswalk people. There were police down there all the time, especially in the summer, and they would take out their whistle and lambaste these drivers who would go flying past. And it was over the course of years and years and years of standing there and enforcing it that now people stop for the crosswalks. So it's a matter of enforcement, and I know you have limited people, limited resources, but we have technology that we can use, and the little trailer that gets put on Forest Beach Road from time to time is great for the 24 hours it's there, but after that, it's all back to business as normal. And we had also talked about speed bumps, and I said, well, they used to put them on Cockle Cove Road, and when this is probably 8 years ago when I first went to the traffic committee, and they said, oh, no, they wouldn't do that. They didn't do that. But when they heard from one of their committee members that, yes, they did, then they changed their tune. So I don't know how the town feels about putting speed bumps up, but they work. And they don't have to be out all the time, especially in the winter when it's a plow issue. But I don't know how else you're going to get people to adhere to the laws. I mean, you've got signs on the beach that say no dogs on the beach from point A to point B. They're down there.
While I have you at the podium, I just want to bring your attention to this slide here. Don't let this slide fool you. The reason why these streets are listed as they are is because there are prime offenders where the majority of our speeders are located, and the majority, quite frankly, where our speeding enforcement is targeted, because this is the high area for the speeding violations. But let me just put your attention to the bottom of this slide. Out of that 1,866 stationary traffic enforcements that you see there, what street did you say, Pleasant Street?
Well, that's the one with no numbers, with no sign on it. Forest Beach is the one I
Forest
live
Beach,
on.
I'm sure if we went back into our system, I'm sure we would see some targeted enforcement in your neighborhood. The problem is, once we show up, we've got about 5 or 10 minutes before our cover is blown and the high beams are flashed and the word is out that we're in the neighborhood. But I want to assure you that you might not see us today, but I'm sure if we go back into that 1866 stationary traffic enforcements, you would see the town map peppered with push pins to show those stationary. We might not be down there, 40% of our traffic enforcement time, but rest assured that if we get a complaint or we receive an operations complaint or a speeding complaint, we do
Yes, you do.
respond
And we're-
and we do document. And one of the things that we document, we try to get to our offices to document is, let's say, for example, we target an area on Forest Beach Road, and we were there for a speeding complaint, and we're there for 30 minutes. Years ago, the log would say, radar for 30 minutes, no violations. Well, we didn't feel that captured the right snapshot of what we were doing. So many, many years ago, we've adopted in our narratives, we try to log every vehicle, especially in the smaller, quieter neighborhoods where we get these complaints. It's like, Forest Beach, Pleasant Street. We might be there for 30 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but we try to log how many vehicles we observe and what the average speed is, because even if there is no violations, one of vehicles, and like the other data said, a lot of those vehicles that were observed captured on the data collection devices were obeying the speed limit. And then again, if there is a citation or a motor vehicle stop that results from that traffic enforcement case, that's a separate case. So I'd be more than happy to take an email, and if you'd like, I could certainly look into the data for you. And again, I'll tell everybody who's listening, contact the police department if you've got motor vehicle complaints, speeding complaints, operations complaints, noise complaints. We will answer your call.
I have called, and you've been very responsive, for which I'm grateful, but I feel like because it's constant, and I live right on the road, and I'm out there raking leaves, and I'm right on the road, and they just go zipping by. I'm grateful for the signs that say give people 4 feet. They sometimes do, sometimes don't. I mean, it's just, it's a challenge, and I appreciate what you guys do, but just know that it still hasn't improved, even with 500 signatures, and it's kind of frustrating. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. There's a gentleman, I can't read your name, it just says E, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you. Sorry, my name is Ed Kasabian. I'm gonna try and do this with a squirmy baby in my arms. But I took interest in this issue a few years ago when I was living full-time on Cape Cod. And I live on Seaview Street, as I mentioned, and this might not work. Lily, could you take Eddie for a second?
But I really want to have to play it with you.
And the cars just really whip by, particularly the valet from CBI. And I did call the police department. They were very responsive. They actually set up shop in my driveway one night. And what's interesting is that they also set up one of the trailers, and the speed limit there is 30 miles an hour, and they didn't find too many instances of speeding. But if you sat on the street and you see people walking from town to CBI and vice versa, it really feels too fast. And I want to say that if you look at the data around reducing from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour, and from 25 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour, the risk of fatality, if there is a collision, is drastically reduced. There's actually a campaign. It's mostly in Europe, but has been implemented in some towns in the U.S. where the campaign is 20 is plenty. And I'm not suggesting we go down to 20 miles an hour, but I think that could be the right in some in some areas of town. And so I think that I just want to say, and I got together a bunch of the neighbors, and I don't think there's one person on Seaview Street or Highland Avenue who is not in favor of reducing the speed limit. The other thing I wanted to mention and get your input on was I saw that Highland Avenue was repaved, and I don't think there were lines in the past, and those lines actually provide a guideline to drivers. Excuse me, I'm just going to finish. Which actually makes drivers go faster because they can see where they are on the road. Whereas if you don't have lines, they're much more cautious. And I think all of these things are great, like the flashing lights, they help a little bit. But the real key is the street design. And I think that's something that I hadn't heard addressed. So I have probably other things to say, but it's a little hard with the kids squirming around. So thank you. And one other question is if there's data year over year on traffic enforcement. Here we go. Thank you. That was particularly challenging.
I'm sorry, was that a question about annual radar data?
Yeah, radar data and actually the number of tickets or citations year over year.
Yes, we'll bring that slide back. In 2024, there were a total of 669 motor vehicle stops, 520 verbal warnings, 149 citations issued. Out of those 149 citations, those included criminal applications, civil citations, arrests, and written warnings.
Got it. And how does that compare to, say, 2023? Is it pretty flat year over year, or are those are there big changes from year to year?
No, we prepared 2024 for this evening, but it seems to be consistent over the past 5 or 6 years.
Got it. The other slide you had up was around the 85th percentile.
Yes.
So as I understand it, that's often the way that traffic speeds are set, which is really a car-centric way of doing it because it kind of ignores the other uses of the roads. And I think particularly on a place like Seaview Street, where you have people going from CBI to town and vice versa, and a lot of cyclists that I see, I think that street would really benefit from a lower speed limit.
Okay, that 85th percentile that you see there, that's typically what's used with some other factors, but that's someone that comes in and does an engineered speed study. That would be if the town was to request the state to survey a road
right.
for a posted speed limit. The other speeds, as we're talking about tonight, have a statutory speed limit attached to them, thickly settled, being 30 miles an hour.
Well, thank you for hosting this. The last thing I wanted to mention on Seaview was the crosswalk kind of at the bottom of the hill, if you're familiar. That is like almost right at the point where a vehicle doesn't see the crosswalk, and there's not a sign, there's not the crosswalk itself is not painted. So I think that would be something to look at as well on that street, especially as cars pick up speed going down the hill.
We did notice that when we recently paved Seaview, that there's only one crosswalk sign and it's not up to current standards, so that's on our list to upgrade this spring. But thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else in the room have any questions or comments? I don't see anyone else online. Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate hearing from you, and get ready for the select board meeting next week if you have any additional comments when they'll be considering placing this on the warrant or showing up to vote on May 10th for the annual town meeting. Thank you.